Hello, and welcome to this video on creating box and whisker plots. As with many data visualizations, there are plenty of software options available to create these in, but today we're going to make them in Microsoft Excel. Okay, box and whisker plots are not as common as other types of charts. So we're going to go over some basics real quick before we make one. We have the box part, the rectangular portion, and the lines extending from the top and the bottom are called the whiskers. This kind of plot displays your data distribution in quartiles. So we can see there are two portions to the box, and those are the second and third quartiles. The line dividing the box in two is the median, which, if you recall, is the number in the middle of the data set. It's not the mean or the average. So the whiskers, where they extend and form a T at the end, is the upper and lower extreme of the data. The space of the whiskers represents the outer quartiles, the first and the fourth quartile. You might also, depending on your data, have some outliers, and those can show up as points outside the whiskers. All right, so now that we have a basic understanding of how these work and a picture of what they look like, let's go make one. Okay, so we're in Microsoft Excel now, and we've got some sample data to work with to make our box and whisker plot. This is entirely fictitious data, and we're just going to pretend that we're a teacher and we've given our students these 3 exams, and we would like to know how they did. And not just whether they did well or not, we could look at that by just looking to see if they had high scores or low scores and doing that kind of an analysis. But we want to know whether the students did about the same on the exams or if the scores were kind of all over the place. So we want to look at kind of the grouping. So a box and whisker plot, which plots things in quartiles, is going to work pretty well for this analysis. Okay, to start with, let's just highlight the data from test number 1. And we just want the scores. We don't want the students because we don't care which students got which scores. And we're going to go up to Insert and over to Charts. Now, my version has some quick little buttons here for the frequently used kinds of charts, and a box and whisker chart is not on here. So we need to click on this little arrow to see all the chart types. And again, it has some recommended charts, but that's not what we're looking for. We need to go to All Charts, and down towards the bottom, we have the box and whisker option, which is what we're looking for. So we will click OK. Okay, let's move it up here to the top and make it a little bit bigger since we're going to be adding in the other test scores as well. We are going to right-click on the chart and choose Select Data. And before we actually add in Test 2 and Test 3, we're going to rename Series 1 so that it says Test 1. That'll just make the legend a little bit more clear. So we're going to click on that and do Edit. Now the values are the data set that we have already highlighted, but we didn't do the series name. So we're going to click on Test 1 and click OK. And now that's updated. So let's add another series for Test 2. So we'll click Add. The series name is this cell right here, Test 2. Series value are all the scores. So we'll highlight those, and it appears right away before we even click OK. Let's click it anyway. Okay, and let's add Test 3 the same way. So add, the series name is in this cell here, and the series value, or the scores, are these right here. And click OK. And then we'll click OK again since we don't have any more tests to add. Okay, so that's a pretty good start. Let's give our graph a title. So we'll just double click on it, call it Test Score Comparison. Okay, let's also add a legend. So we'll click on this Add Chart Elements button, click Legend. So now Test 1, 2, and 3 are appearing so that we know which color goes with which test. Okay, let's also add the axis titles so that we know that the y-axis is the test scores. So we'll click on this. And then again, we can just double click to edit. And since the test score is really the only value we care about, we don't really care about the x-axis, then we can go ahead and click on this and delete it. And we'll click on this number 1 and delete that as well because that doesn't really add anything to our chart. Okay, let's clean it up just a little bit more. We have the test scores over here on the y-axis. And we didn't offer any extra credit, so 100% is the highest score that any of the students could have gotten. So we really don't need this 120% over at the side. So let's modify the access values so that it doesn't go up that high. So we will double click on it And then we've got an option over at the side for format access. Let's go to access options. The minimum is 0. The maximum is 120. Let's adjust that so it's just 100. Okay, that looks a lot better. Okay, one of the last modifications that we might want to do is change the color or the style. We can do that up at the top under this change colors option here, depending on what you'd like. We'll just do this one for today. Okay, and we can also change the chart style. There's a few different options for it up here. Some of these make it a little easier to read. I kind of like this one at the end because it's got more of the minor grid lines so that we can easily see what the scores are. So let's go with that one. And now that it's all plotted out and it's nice and readable, we can see that generally people did better on tests 1 and 2 than they did on test 3, so they're higher up on the graph. But there was also a wider spread of scores on test 3. So the upper whisker is all the way up here in the 90s and the lower one goes all the way down to 0. So we could use this information and the graph to help us better interpret the test scores. So if next semester or next year when we wanted to offer these tests again, if we wanted to modify the tests, this might help us in making some of those decisions. Okay, that wraps up this video. We've covered the basics on creating box and whisker plots in Microsoft Excel. The version of Excel you're using might mean that some of the features I showed are in different places or aren't available, or you might have other features that you didn't see on my screen. Hopefully though, things should be generally the same, and the Microsoft support website is really useful for learning how to do things, including making graphs and using formulas. Please reach out to the library if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.